Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick, Westworld Season 1, Episode 4, Dissonance Theory, Tim, Bibbs, Alonso.
We know what dissonance theory
So
means.
much dissonance.
And we knew all along.
Yes.
Yes, we did not wiki it right before we started shooting.
No, you can't look that up on Facebook
Heavens
on the video.
no. Obviously Maeve is clearly starting to put the pieces together. She's figuring out she's in the Matrix.
Basically, yeah, it's actually like I love her narrative when you look at it just from her perspective, because if you imagine if just the world around you just didn't seem right, and then you suddenly actually had a real clue that everything around you was a lie. Was bullshit.
It's like having
driven.
deja vu, but with tangible evidence that this did happen once before.
Yeah,
I read it a
really
lot
scary.
like the silence in Doctor Who. I don't know if you guys are
Exactly.
Like you put the mark down and there's already 100 marks on your arms, and
Exactly.
you're like, fuck. It's a good thing she keeps putting those drawings back for her to discover again and like add
Yeah, I know,
more
because
drawings.
at some point she would have found like 3, and you think she'd stop there, but no. So good for her. You know.
No, I like it. Yeah, no, it's good.
I love the idea that the Native American characters have turned the hazmat suits guy into deities or demons or whatever.
Which means that they remember too.
Yes.
Well, it's going rampant.
Like
Everyone
way
knows.
more than just our 3 main hosts are like having this issue where they're
Right.
remembering
Well,
things they shouldn't.
it's been an ongoing thing. It was introduced in the first episode. This whole notion of the reverie is like we can't wipe them down completely because then they don't have the personality that's formed by dreaming or by memories.
They need to be able to learn a little bit and evolve and adapt.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but the downside is, when all they do is get murdered or fucked brutally and then murdered, that's not going to wear well when the memories start coming in.
Even the putting them back together is scary for them.
Yeah, I mean, like
Created this whole religion around it. the shades.
everything that the robots go through is PTSD invoking stuff, and they're making them remember it.
We had this whole speech from Anthony Hopkins, Ford.
Robert Ford.
We have this whole speech from Ford about basically godhood.
Wait, did you say Robert Ford?
Yeah, Dr. Robert Ford.
That's
I
cute.
never
I
caught
didn't know we
that.
put that together.
That's the guy.
No, that's adorbs. Okay, I thought it was a joke about Gerald Ford and like the assembly line and all.
I
that.
see what you
Yeah,
did
yeah.
there,
Not Gerald Ford,
Westworld.
Edward Ford.
Too many Fords. Anyway, he has a whole speech about godhood, and I thought to myself, okay, so he's bringing himself up as a god, and that's how he treats himself. He doesn't care about all of this business stuff because, as far as Westworld is concerned, he's God. Why would he care about anything else? He's doing great. And then everyone is starting to become aware of the presence of gods among them, and I can't wait for them to sacrifice him, for them to find out God is real and to kill God. That's where I suspect this may be going, and for me, that feels like where the momentum is. Because there's going to be a lot of anger, righteous fury.
Do we think that's what happened to Arnold?
Possibly.
I mean, he wanted his creations to have cognition. He wanted them to be aware of what they were, and
He wanted to live among them.
and that's probably a little upsetting once they realize for what they were made.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I'd be pissed too. Who wouldn't?
But then
sucks.
who were those hosts that killed Arnold? And will they remember that they did it?
Maybe they do. So we have this whole thing.
Well, maybe Michael Wincott is one of them.
Yeah. Here, I have a serious question though, because the man in black, Ed Harris, who we find out in this one is actually like in charge of some sort of major foundation that
Right.
actually does a lot of wonderful works.
He is a white hat in real life.
In real life, he's a white hat. Here, he's a black hat. He is on a quest to unlock a maze that is at the center of this thing. It has to do with the other creator. It has to do with Arnold in some way. But the thing he's been looking for, that I guess he's been looking for a long time, this is like the last storyline he hasn't really done,
Right.
involves Wyatt, a character who Ford just created.
Right, and maybe the creation of Wyatt is about providing him with clues, perhaps, or giving him some
Maybe.
sort of entry point. Because if he's just hearing about Wyatt for the first time because Wyatt only just now happened.
And we are hearing about Wyatt for the first time.
Right, and so, but maybe that's the whole point of Wyatt's existence isn't just to give Teddy an interesting backstory; it's to provide some sort of through line for the Man in Black to follow. I try not to read other recaps of the show because I feel like I'm just going to glom onto it too much. But
Sure.
on Twitter, I happened to see a headline where somebody said that The Man in Black is a commentary on fan culture.
I read that article, and it's all about how I'm not going to do it justice. Look up the article. It was an interesting interpretation. but
Slate,
it's-
I think.
Yeah, it's I think it was Vulture, but like it was if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Google it. It was a good article. But it's about sort of the way that we communicate with our art and with our video games, and the way that we become obsessed with them. People who are 100% completionists on games need to get all the trophies. But also the way that we interact with our games and how it becomes who we really, really are. Are you really who you are when you're on Xbox Live and yelling horrible things at people? Is that who you really are? And that's an interesting commentary.
Well, 'cause
Or does anonymity provide you the opportunity to be a different person?
That's a question.
And then who are you when there are no consequences, when there are no stakes? And that's what the Man in Black says. There's no way I can die. There's no way anything bad can happen to me. I am an invincible God mode guest in this park, and I want it to feel more real. I want the actual Wild West.
And what Logan keeps saying to William is, I want to see who you really are. I want to see, you know, what really comes out of you. So there is this notion of, that the Avatar is really, you know, that Kal-El is really Superman and Clark Kent is just the whatever, or vice versa, you know, however you put that argument. What I was thinking in terms of fan culture was this notion of, I have to dig through the whole thing, upend it, and feel like I have a voice in telling the creators how to do their job.
Right.
That's the thing that the internet, I think, has really created, this notion of fan ownership where people feel like they get to dictate terms to J.J. Abrams or Russell Davis or whoever, and say, well, I want this, and this character has to do that, or fuck you.
Or even in video games. I remember when Mass Effect 3 came out, and I brought the whole thing to a conclusion, and people felt so pissed by the ending that they thought they tried to put together petitions to change it. And I'm like, no, that's a story. You didn't like it. That's fine. You're entitled, but you're stuck with it now. The other thing we haven't talked about is we've talked about how in the background Ford is coming up with this huge narrative, and they keep talking about how he's making changes across the board that are affecting everything in little tiny ways.
Right.
Does the fact that the Native American characters have a god that they worship, is that part of Ford's new narrative? If Wyatt is part of Ford's new narrative, and Ford is now particularly interested in thinking about Arnold and his influence here, is Wyatt Arnold? Or is Wyatt Ford's recreation of Arnold? Like, is that what he's doing? He's creating religion. He's creating a new belief system. He's creating a narrative in which the reality breaks down. What if the story of Westworld that we know from the movie, which is Jurassic Park, the robots go nuts and kill people, what if that's a narrative?
A narrative for
a narrative
the
that exists in this world?
Like the park is supposed to break, you're supposed to be in real danger.
The park feels real.
And maybe that's what the Man in Black is trying to unlock. At least that's what he says what he wants to achieve.
It's so weird because like so much of Westworld is just trying to figure out where it's going to go, that we're not necessarily talking too much about what's actually happening in the episodes. Let's talk about what's actually happening.
Well, let's talk about
get distracted.
Let's talk about Dolores, who has clearly hopped the track and is, you know, she's remembering things. She's undergoing a new narrative, whether she's in control of it or not.
She's becoming a protagonist. She's becoming a guest.
Now, what confuses me, though, is we begin the episode with one of her conversations that she's having with...
William?
With
Jeffrey Rush.
Jeffrey Wright. Sorry about the character names. There's too fucking many.
There's a lot of characters.
Bernard. Thank you. She's having one of her conversations with Bernard, and then bam, she's back by the fire with William. So it's like, is that a flashback? Is she dreaming about that meeting? Did they take her out, give her the meeting, and put her back in? Like, I don't know.
All bets are off with Dolores. Like, she's experiencing time in a different way than we're seeing it, I think.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, because it seems like from the conversation, the events that just happened, because she's talking about the death of her parents and not going back and blah, blah, blah. You know?
So she seems to be, like, out of the cycle officially now. Like, she doesn't go back and remember again. She's out.
I like their excuse for why they're not just taking her out of the narrative, because if a host grabs you, or not a host, if a guest grabs you and just wants you part of their narrative, you have to do it. So as soon as William says, oh, no, I'm playing with her. They're like, oh, cool, fair enough.
That's where she's going.
So we're going to completely ignore this and let it destroy us all.
And then meanwhile, they're trying to figure out what to do with Suicide Guy.
Yes.
And so the Duke of Burgundy is like, no, we'll take care of it. You're off of this, you know. Whereas as opposed to trying to actually figure out what happened and why it might have done what it did.
What do you think about the whole Orion thing, where Orion's belt is wrong? Does that just mean that like the sky in Westworld is different? Or is that actually just supposed to be like something else completely? Is that like a clue?
It could be a clue to something else.
Yeah, I think it just means we're supposed to wildly speculate about it and like titillate a little bit. Ooh, different stars. Woo!
But if it's been acknowledged that they're different, then at least we think that maybe we're still on Earth. So
Sure.
Or maybe this particular host isn't Gala-fucking-Leo.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
he
he's
might just not be good at.
counting,
I think it'd be a weird thing to bring up and then have it just like, yeah, he just wasn't good at astronomy.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of a risk.
That's a lost answer.
He's not,
Yeah.
not a very.
Yes.
He's not good at carving.
Someone brought up, I was reading on Twitter, and it was Max Landis of all people, the executive producer of Dirk Gently, which also premiered this week, and it's actually a good show.
Yeah, we hope to talk about that more next week.
But he brought up an interesting point that is there any stakes on this show with all these characters who are robots? And just physically, we know that they're just robots. They can be repaired. They can have their memories wiped. Does it feel like there's real consequence for these characters or not? Because I think we're projecting that. But if you look at it at an objective level, does that affect the show in any way for you?
Like,
can they all be shut down with a deep and dreamless sleep?
Theoretically, can't they?
So, like, Dolores achieves cognition and then just escapes the park and goes to live in New York City, if that's still a thing.
Right.
But she's still just a robot. Like,
right. But that's a serious question that raises. I don't know if that's necessarily a criticism so much as one level of a complicated show.
Well,
Okay.
let's
That's
dovetail that
conversation.
into Maeve's storyline for this particular one, because she is the latest robot to
Become
get further out of
self-aware,
her
yeah.
cycle. So she remembers a shootout from a particular guest, and she goes to collect herself. She has flashbacks to being repaired. She remembers that a bullet is still inside her, and she wants to confirm that. So she pulls Hector out of his particular cycle, gives him the motivation to have the safe combination. If he helps her, explains what her visions are, learns about the shades, and then cut a bullet out of her to confirm she is not crazy. However, once she cut that bullet out of her, and she learns that nothing matters, that she is a robot stuck in a cycle, that's going to happen again. She'll discover the drawings again.
Right.
She'll ask Hector again to pull the bullet out of her, and now it won't be there, confirming that she is crazy.
Oh, either that or
That's good. I like that.
Unless-
That's
How does
cool.
she really get out of this?
unless she actually remembers all of those events,
yeah.
including the
Anything's
extraction.
possible,
But
anything's
I think it does sort of introduce the notion of, again, this show, because of the whole idea of like who's God and who has a soul and who doesn't, is playing with the notion of nihilism and predestination and fate and all that stuff. If there's no afterlife, does it matter? Or if our acts aren't playing the factor in deciding whether or not we reach the afterlife, does anything we do on earth matter? Like all that stuff, all of the different sort of branches of Christianity and other religions that believe in reincarnation or life after death, it all comes into play here with her knowledge that if the last line of the episode is nothing matters.
Yeah. There's one other thing I was kind of distracted by, and I'm curious about your take on it. So William and
Logan.
They leave one guy alive. The guy turns out to have an Easter egg. He knows about a character who will unlock something that Logan's really interested in.
Right.
Take him to Pariah.
But Logan convinces William not just to let it go, whatever like that. But then Logan goes off with the dude. But there's no shot of William
Or Dolores
following them. I thought they were going to go together, but it looks like they're separate. I don't know if that was just awkward editing.
Yeah,
or,
I read that as just a wider shot, or a tighter shot than it needed to be to show.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought maybe I missed something.
I think if they were establishing that they weren't following, we would have gotten
seen
that
them go a
shot of
different
them not
direction,
moving or whatever.
Well, we didn't get the shot of them following either, so I think it was just unclear.
Right, I
visual
understand,
language. It's
but,
fine.
yeah.
It's fine. I was just curious if I missed something. All right, that's fine. I'm not even mad.
Oh, here's a scene that I just love. This is a strictly sort of visual gag or idea or something. When they're having the meeting about the guy with the crushed head, no one who works for Westworld is wearing a uniform, but they're all wearing the exact same shade of blue. Like Scientist Girl and the Dutch lady and the other Hemsworth and Bernard, they're all wearing similar shades of cobalt blue. And it's just like, okay, is there a dress code, or is it just light well?
Shattered glass.
Ooh. That's
a deep cut.
That's a deep cut.
You're welcome, Internet. Look that
So
one
anyway,
up.
that struck me as funny.
All right.
I always rewatch the Anthony Hopkins scenes a couple of times, and I thought this one was particularly impressive, how he was showing off that he is the motherfucker in complete control.
Yeah, this is the table where I ate with my parents.
Yes, I know. I fucking know you. You sat here when you were a little girl, and I know it.
Right.
And now everybody froze mid-wine pour, mid-harvest.
I'm going to start lifting my finger like this, just sort of randomly, just to see if it works.
If anybody at home locks up. But it was one thing that he had all of the hosts still working in the agave field, knowing that it was all moments away from being bulldozed.
Right.
But so Ford knows everything. Does he have eyes on Maeve? Does he have eyes on Dolores? Does he realize what they're realizing?
Again, this is my question. Is all of this stuff that we're talking about just
Part of
his
the
new
plan?
narrative? Obviously, some of it precedes his idea to have a new narrative, but maybe he's incorporating it.
So
maybe it's all a factor.
so if the idea of Maeve and the other robots, the hosts becoming self-aware and conceivably using that information in a way to fight back against the guests, which they've never been allowed to do or been able to successfully be programmed to do because there's that line. That obviously then dovetails in with the Man in Black's mission to figure out a way to have an experience on Westworld in which a human being can die.
Cognition and consciousness are the end of Westworld. It can't keep going on beyond that. So it seems weird to me that Ford would want to play that out if he really is enjoying his godhood in Westworld. Clearly that's what the Man in Black wants.
Yes.
But I'm not so sure Ford doesn't want it.
Hang on a second, because when you think about, let's go back to sort of a Judeo-Christian thing. Okay, the idea of free will and why it exists in a religious context. You don't just believe in God because God is God. You believe in God because you choose to. You have the option not to.
Sure.
So if Ford wants to test his godhood, that would be the factor. Will they believe in me? Will they come to me? Will I truly be a god
If I reveal my
have,
existence.
If they have the option not to. And won't that be the true test of my power?
I don't hate that theory.
Yeah.
I
I think it
that.
could work. I think
Yeah.
it could still work that way.
Okay.
I don't know if it falls apart there.
I'm just wondering if the Man in Black and Ford are working, opposing each other or actually headed towards the same ends.
I'd be curious to find out.
They could very well be heading for the same thing, but from opposite ends, and either
Both unstoppable objects.
Yeah, and accidentally discovering that they have similar goals, or finding out that their goals were not intended to overlap but do anyway.
I'm worried we're going to find out they're like brothers or something. And it's going to be like this really trite reveal. And then
Well,
they
at
just
least
shoot each other and it's over.
we know he's not Arnold, and we know he's not William, which was the fan theory for a while, right?
that it's taking place at two timelines simultaneously. I never liked that idea.
The
I thought
show
that was
is really
forced.
good at debunking crazy fan theories, and I'm curious if the writers had all those theories and then meticulously pulled them apart to make us feel dumb, involved.
Well, one thing I think you have to admit about the writers on Westworld, whether or not you're super into this show or not, is that they clearly thought it out rather well.
Yeah,
and they
really
were
seems that
big on reversing things and making you think things are going one way and then they're going another. They clearly thought out many possibilities and decided to lead us in one direction and then turn.
They have laid out a beautiful and elaborate series of rugs that they are yanking
one at a time.
Yes.
So, a lot to chew on with this show, as always. And we'll be back next week with more. Please join us.